if you thought Jeep's Wrangler was strictly for Californian rock hoppers and D-list boy band members, think again. This updated JL Series 4th generation model offers new media technology and goes just as far off-road.
The Jeep Wrangler is one of the most iconic serious SUVs on the planet, and it's never been a car to shy away from even the toughest off-road conditions. Now, the current model is this 4th generation JL series version, and just as this iconic model line crested the 5 million mark for global sales, it was significantly updated for the 2024 model year, and that created the car we're going to look at here. It's the most sophisticated take on this model yet, but it's still very much a Wrangler. Bit of history first. Now, shortly after the surface of the Earth cooled, vertebrates appeared, developed into dinosaurs, and then died for reasons still not fully understood. And shortly after that, the original version of this model was first built. Or perhaps that's just how it seems. Actually, it was in 1938 when the US government's brief for a light reconnaissance vehicle resulted in the development of the Willys Jeep and the subsequent production of 368,000 of them for use during World War II. General George C. Marshall described it as America's greatest contribution to modern warfare. And as most now know, the spiritual successor to the Willys Jeep is today's Jeep Wrangler. Much separates the two designs, of course. What's ideal for a theatre of war doesn't necessarily work for a family trip to the cinema. And over the years, remaining in the 20th century, from 1987 through CJ, YJ and TJ Wrangler models, as different company owners came and went, Jeep designers struggled with the need to develop this icon without losing its distinct appeal. Their biggest challenge came with this current car's JK series predecessor that was launched in 2007, and that justified its existence in the modern SUV market with two Wrangler firsts, 4 doors and diesel power. But that JK series model still didn't really reach out beyond this car's hardcore base of enthusiasts. With this replacement 4th generation JL series model first launched back in 2018, the challenge for Jeep was to modernise the vehicle without alienating the hardcore fans of the marque. Now, the first step was to make sure that it rode a whole lot better than its predecessor. That wasn't actually all that difficult. Since then, the brand has concentrated on gradually enhancing powertrain refinement, safety and efficiency. Having done so, the company has more recently tweaked the exterior looks and also updated the cabin, before also launching its first full-float Dana rear axle on Rubicon models like this one. All of this creating the version of the Mark IV model we're going to look at here, which incorporated all of those important updates for the 2024 model year. To find out more about it, you are as usual going to need the industry's most comprehensive review, the Car and Driving Road Test. Get behind the wheel of one of these and you know instantly you're in a more serious kind of SUV. But there is a polish to the interior of this updated 2024 version of the JL series model that a Wrangler's never had before. Will that translate into the on-road experience? And would you even want it to? Possibly not. In the past, previous Wranglers never had to be very good on road. I mean, as long as it didn't shake your fillings out on the way to the surf shack, all would be forgiven once you set this Jeep's tyres into the rough stuff. But Marlboro men are in short supply these days, and to keep this car in customers, the brand has had to appeal beyond those who might use their cars as weekend mountain playthings, without diluting what makes a Wrangler a Wrangler. No small task. Come to the latest version of this car with no previous experience of this model, and you might wonder whether the brand has achieved any of those lofty objectives here, particularly if your variant of choice happens to be the top Rubicon version that we're trying here. Now yes, with this updated model there's the promise of even greater off-road ability thanks to the installation of the company's first full float Dana rear axle, more on that shortly. But over tarmac there's nothing floaty about the ride of this Rubicon. Those extra heavy duty all-wheel drive mechanicals further embellish the already prodigious 2.1 ton curb weight, and this Rubicon's knobbly all-terrain BF Goodrich tyres rumble over the tarmac with all the subtlety of a military convoy. I mean, forget SUVs, the back to basics experience here is more akin to what you get in a utilitarian pickup. Now that could be fun with the roof open on a rural trail on a sunny day, but it might just be annoying on a dark February morning on the school run. Of course, if you had experience of former Wrangler models, your perspective might be very different, particularly if you'd chosen the more accessible Sahara variant, which gets road-ready tyres and a more tarmac-orientated command track four-wheel drive system. From launch back in 2018, this JL series model gained more sophisticated 5-link suspension, so if you're coming to it from the previous generation JK series Wrangler, then you'll find that potholes no longer feel like craters. And the steering at least now seems in some way inclined to take your commands into account rather than completely ignoring them for the first half turn of lock. The main changes though with this Mark IV design took place beneath the bonnet. The JL series Wrangler ushered in a new 8-speed ZF Auto gearbox, which initially was mated to a 2-litre GME 4-cylinder petrol unit and a 2.2-litre multi-jet diesel. That latter black pump fuel unit was subsequently deleted from the range in 2021 to make way for a petrol plug-in hybrid 4xe model, which unfortunately was never engineered for right-hand drive. And sadly, the 3.6-litre V6 and the 6.4-litre V8 petrol units that Jeep offers with this car in other markets, they haven't made it to Blighty either. Which leaves only the 2-litre turbocharged inline 4-cylinder petrol engine that we mentioned earlier for us to try here, which as before develops a useful 400 Newton meters of torque. Not quite enough, you might think, for what Jeep calls its hero model, but sufficient nonetheless to allow this car to do all the things a Wrangler ought to be able to do. On tarmac, as you might expect, this isn't a car that takes kindly to being driven quickly, but if you ever were to, then this engine's 272 braked horses shifted along almost alarmingly quickly. The rest to 62 miles an hour sprint is dispatched in just 7.6 seconds, although the barn door aerodynamics restrict top speed in this Rubicon to 99 miles an hour. Thanks to the lack of knobbly tyres, it's 112 mph in the base Sahara version. More importantly though, there is a continuing provision of up to 2.5 tonnes of brake towing capacity. All of which is useful to know, but not especially relevant to what this car has been primarily designed to do, and that's namely to drive to places that you probably think twice about walking to without a backpack full of mountaineering equipment. If the designers had democratized this JL series model to the point where it was no longer capable of extreme feats like that, then the whole point of Wrangler motoring would have been lost. So enthusiasts have been reassured that both versions of this improved 4th generation design continue to merit what the brand calls trail rated status. Status improved on with this JL series design with better off-road angles, a tighter 10.4 meter turning circle and more ground clearance, so more wading capability. As with all proper off-roaders, there's a 2-speed transfer case which offers a series of dedicated 4x4 driving settings, proper mechanical ones rather than the mere traction system software tweaks that masquerade as off-road modes in most modern SUVs. It's appropriate then that you access them not through buttons but the old-fashioned way with a second gear lever, which requires a very firm tug. This setup's first option lies in allowing you to shift from the default 2H rear-driven setting to 4H auto, which can be done at speeds of up to 47 miles an hour, and which gives you on-demand high-range four-wheel drive. For slightly boggier terrain, you can also shift the transfer case a notch to the right to access 4H part-time, which splits drive equally between the front and rear axles. For more serious terrain, your final option is 4LO, which designates four-wheel drive low range, at which point in a base Sahara model equipped with the command track four-wheel drive system, 2.72 to 1 crawl ratio is then engaged. If with even a passing level of frequency you're going to be using that extreme capability that 4LO delivers, then you won't be in that lesser Wrangler model. Instead, you'll be amongst those who've gone straight for the most focused, the most serious Rubicon derivative that we're trying here today. As well as the gnarlier BF Goodrich 32-inch tyres we mentioned earlier, it gets Jeep's heavy-duty Rock Track four-wheel drive system, which uses a tougher low-range crawler ratio rated at 77.2 to 1. Plus, you can press a dashboard button to detach the Wrangler's sway bars, and we call those anti-roll bars on our side of the pond, and that'll allow more suspension travel. Now, if despite all this you have somehow got your Wrangler Rubicon really stuck, then you can individually lock this model's heavy-duty Dana front and rear axles using the brand's True-Lock electric front and rear axle lockers. A simpler anti-spin differential, which works automatically and only on the rear axle, is optional on the Sahara model. As we mentioned earlier, that Dana rear axle has been upgraded on this model year 2024 Rubicon variant. It now incorporates Jeep's first full float setup, the so-called Dana 44 HD system, which consists of a wheel hub assembly separate from the axle shaft with a spindle bolted to the axle tube, which supports the wheel hub via a pair of wheel bearings. By using this full float axle design, the weight of the vehicle is transferred to the axle tube rather than the axle shaft itself, and that means that the axle shaft is subjected only to torsional loads, with its sole function being to transmit power to the wheel hub. This in turn makes the axle stronger and more robust. Got that? Great. If you're still with us as we delve into the off-road detail here, you'll also want to know about the Off-Road Plus, OR Plus mode that provides unique powertrain and chassis tuning, specifically tailored for high-range sand performance and low-range rock activity. OR Plus adjusts the ABS, the ESC, the accelerator pedal, the traction control and the transmission calibrations. Sand mode is activated when OR Plus is enabled while in 4H gear, and rock mode is enabled when OR Plus is activated while in 4 low. You'd imagine that all this would deliver a virtually unrivaled set of off-road stats, and you'd be absolutely right. Helped by 252 millimeters of ground clearance, this four-door Rubicon model offers an approach angle of 36 degrees, a departure angle of 31.4 degrees, and a ramp breakover angle of up to 20.8 degrees. Although, if the old two-door body style was still offered here, all three of those figures would have the potential to be even better. For reference, the respective figures of a Sahara model are 35.4 degrees, 30.7 degrees, and 20 degrees. You oversee all this from a superbly commanding driving position, and you can monitor it all in real time via selectable off-road drivetrain and pitch and roll screens in the instrument cluster. We should also mention select speed control. This is an off-road cruise control which allows the driver to maintain a steady speed during rock crawling and other kinds of low-speed maneuvering. A selectable tyre fill alert can be set through the central touchscreen, and that's ideal for off-road adventurers who deflate their tyre pressures to get grip on off-road courses when they're traversing mud and rocks. Put all this to the test and you'll be glad of the 4 skid plates and, on this Rubicon, the heavy gauge tubular steel rock rails that protect the underside of this Jeep from rock and root damage. Plus, at up to 5 miles an hour, both body shapes can wade through up to 760 millimeters of water, or even more if you were to go for the optional engine snorkel. So how does all this feel out in the wilds? Well, pretty darned impressive is the answer. Showing up to a green laning meet in a Wrangler is pretty much like pitching up to a track day in a Porsche 911 GT3. You'll get instant respect and, on the move, a feeling that the car beneath you is capable of far more than you'll ever need it to deliver. And once you've had this experience, then you venture back onto the tarmac, you're going to view this Jeep in a whole different light. Whereas before you might have been, I don't know, grumbling about the wind noise, the susceptibility to crosswinds, the vibrations you get through the controls, or the ocean liner levels of steering response, exposure to this Wrangler's real talents leave you far more disposed to tolerate its idiosyncrasies, maybe even to find them charming rather than irritating. And in terms of wind noise and crosswinds, why not go the whole hog and invite it all in by getting out your socket set and taking Jeep up on its invitation to remove the doors, take off the roof and flatten the windscreen? I mean, in that form, there really would be nothing like the Wrangler experience. And maybe there isn't, even with all the bodywork intact. In an age where most Jeep models merely trade on this brand's legendary heritage, this one lives it out. It delivers it in road-ready form and writes a further chapter to the story. It reminds you of what an SUV once was and what it still can be, and it's one of a kind. The model year 2024 updates that created the car we look at here came with some very minor visual changes, but you would have to be a real die-hard Jeep fan to notice those. The Wrangler format is iconic, simple boxy body dropped onto an old-style ladder frame chassis with a folding screen, detachable doors and a removable roof. You don't mess with that. Or with the familiar frontage, which offers up the usual circular headlights and familiar 7-slot grille. Elsewhere around the car, all the usual Wrangler cues are present and correct. The separate bumpers, the outboard spare wheel, and the extended wheel arches flared at angles similar to those of the original Willys Jeep. The profile perspective hasn't changed much over the years, although these days, for our market at least, it's now only possible to get this 4,882mm long four-door body style, which is 550mm longer than the short wheelbase two-door variant they still offer in the States, but 124mm longer than the rival model you might be most tempted to compare this car to, the 110 version of Land Rover's Defender. Even so, you're paying here for style and capability, not sheer size. Now, earlier we mentioned the removable doors. They're fashioned with corners shaped so that they're less likely to be crashed into obstacles when they've been opened on sharp slopes. Detaching them is a little easier than it used to be with the previous generation Wranglers, because on this JL series model they're fashioned from lightweight, high-strength aluminium. You will still need a set of tools for the job though. Now, Jeep has helpfully stamped the Torx bit tool size you'll need for this job on each of the prominent hinges. As part of the JL series design changes, Jeep slightly lowered the belt line so the windows could be a bit bigger for better visibility on extreme trails. These huge black flared arches embellished at the front with pretend vents house 17-inch polished alloy wheels clad with 32-inch BF Goodrich multi-terrain tires on this Rubicon model. You'll get 18-inch rims and more road-orientated rubber if you were going to opt for the lesser Sahara trimmed model. Traditional touches include exposed bolts, but on this improved model, the old coat hanger style retracting aerial has at last been dispensed with in favour of a stealth antenna incorporated into the windscreen. More signs of progress feature at the front, where that iconic 7-slot grille now wears an updated look. On this Rubicon version, that means black textured slots, neutral grey metallic bezels and a body-coloured surround. You'd identify the Sahara model by this grille's platinum silver slots and bezels. Slimmer both visually and literally, the updated grille's black textured vertical slots improve cooling. As before, this appendage has a canted upper section and its outer slats intersect with headlights featuring full LED beams from Magneti Marelli. The almost vertical windscreen features a 4-bolt design at the top of the frame, which allows it to fold down easily, although you have to get your socket set out to do that. That feature feature, by the way, was built into the original Willys Jeep to make them stackable for easy wartime shipping. The military-style bonnet, which also reminds you of that era, features twin vents, real cooling ones this time, along with strapping points and chunky exposed catches. Daytime running lights sit on the front of the trapezoidal wheel flares, and fog lights are embedded deep into each corner of this enormous chunky bumper. This sits ahead of the partly exposed radiator and has a big black towing eye underneath. Let's move to the rear. Now, as part of the changes made back in 2018 to move from the old JK series model to this JL series design, Jeep installed these more stylized LED tail lamps and added corner reflectors into this smarter bumper. More important, though, was the designer's decision to lower the spare wheel by 300 millimeters, and that's to improve visibility for both the driver and passengers. As you can see, that means it's had to incorporate the camera for the rear parking system. As for the stuff you can't see, well, you won't be surprised to hear that serious structural strength means serious weight, so think 2.1 tons at the curb. Okay, time to take a seat inside. Now, the doors can't stay in an open position as they would in an ordinary car because they don't have the usual metal stays, just these fabric ties. They're necessary for the detachment feature. The aperture, which is unapologetically decorated with exposed rivet points, isn't especially wide, and getting in requires a big step up and a bit of a stretch over the obstructive sill. But it is worth it once you're in and seated commandingly in front of this gigantic 3-spoke leather-stitched wheel. No, it isn't super high quality in here, but at least you no longer feel that you're piloting something that would pass muster as an exhibit in the Imperial War Museum. And that's a feeling aided by the new feature that really sets the cabin of this updated model year 2024 Wrangler apart from previous versions, this far bigger 12.3-inch central touchscreen. Jeep has also added extra fabric and polyurethane soft touch surfaces and new AMPS bracket provisions on top of the dash. Otherwise, everything's much as before, which means there's everything you need and nothing that you don't, with loads of wipe clean surfaces which encourage you to use this car in the exact way it was intended, rather than making you feel all worried every time you get into it with your muddy boots. It's really all rather refreshing compared with the SUV norm. You're faced with a dashboard here that's as bluff as the north face of the Eiger, but it's much more appealing than the boring plasticky layout that characterized the interior of the pre-2018 JK series design, whose tightly sectioned centre stack gave way on this JL series model to a more open layout, although one absolutely festooned with knobs and buttons. We should talk about the open air aspect. All Wranglers come as standard with a 3-piece modular hardtop. Jeep calls it a Freedom Top. That sort of thing was also fitted to the previous generation JK model, but there the panels were so heavy and fiddly to remove that most owners hardly ever bothered to open them up. With this JL series Wrangler, the ones at the front are lighter and much easier to detach. You just unclip all these little catches and you lift out these two front sections and they store away in tailored bags in the boot. Because the rear view mirror is connected to this header bar here, its positioning isn't affected. The rear part of the roof all the way back to the tailgate, well, that can also be removed in a single hit, but unfortunately that's a far more difficult process. That requires the removal of bolts on the low edge of the window line on either side of the cargo area. And once you've done that, you'd need 2 people to lift off the panel work, and then of course you'd need to find somewhere to put the thing. In short, if all you're ever likely to do is to want sunroof-style open-air access at the front, then the Freedom Top arrangement will be fine. But if you really want to regularly be able to experience the full Willys Jeep-style open-air Wrangler feeling, then you are probably going to want to consider paying extra, and that's for one of the alternative roof packages that the brand is offering, which replace this detachable rear panel with a fabric hood. Now, Jeep now calls this the Mopar Sunrider flip top, and it slots in behind the two removable Freedom Top panels. These are available either in black or body colour, incidentally. The Sunrider hood folds back manually like the roof on a Mazda MX-5, or even better, you can alternatively have that specified in Sky One Touch Power Top form with electrical operation instead. With the roof fully down, with the doors removed, and with the windscreen folded down, the Wrangler driving experience really is like nothing else. As we were suggesting earlier, the cabin design is like nothing else either. In a Wrangler, you've always known exactly what you were sitting in. Given that this current model is almost twice as expensive as it was a decade or so ago though, something more than quirkiness is required to steal stares in the showroom. And with this updated version of this 4th generation model, Jeep's obviously been very conscious of the importance of providing that. The need to retain the possibility for active owners to be able to hose out the cabin prevented the fixtures and fittings from being overly luxurious, but there are still plenty of premium touches like the leather stitched upper dash trimming, the ambient LED interior lighting, the rubber overmoldings across many of the touch points here, and the platinum chromed bezels for the 4 central vents. Plus there are soft touch vinyl wrapped door panels with proper armrests, and McKinley leather upholstery with napper inserts on this Rubicon model, as well as heat for the steering wheel and also for the seats that feature standard lumbar support. It's all slightly undermined though by the polystyrene type finish that decorates the inside of these roof panels. Now earlier we referenced the fact that a new era of touchscreen infotainment has made it to Wrangler motoring, specifically this 12.3-inch Uconnect central dash monitor, which will seem huge if you're used to the previous 8.4-inch display. It benefits from the latest Stellantis Group media tech, which is why the Uconnect 5 Android setup offers 5 times the previous operating speed and regular over-the-air updates. Plus, 2 Bluetooth-enabled phones can now be connected in and simultaneously used. This monitor is now big enough to include a row of shortcut functions along its left-hand side there: music, climate, nav, phone, vehicle and apps. And to suit the current media trend, its home screen can show in a series of customizable widget sections. We've got phone and Apple CarPlay here. The latter feature, by the way, just like Android Auto, is now wirelessly connectable. The screen can work with 5 user profiles plus a valet mode, all selectable from the option on the upper part of the frame. That also shows time and temperature along with seat and wheel heating. For best use of this infotainment setup, you'll want to download the compatible Jeep app onto your smartphone, and that'll allow you to customize your onboard entertainment, access internet radio, online music and social media. This screen is your access point to connected navigation and a 9-speaker Alpine premium audio system too. And it's so admirably clear and intuitive to use, so you won't have to be delving into the manual every time you want to Bluetooth pair your phone or try to find a point of interest on the sat nav. There is voice control, pinch and swipe functionality, and a text to talk feature if you need that. Anything this central monitor can't tell you, and a lot that it can, is covered off by the 7-inch TFT colour screen that sits between the instrument cluster's 2 conventional analog dials. The customizable center section is flanked by temperature and fuel gauges, while along the top are compass and ambient temperature readouts. Using integrated buttons on the steering wheel, you can use this display to deliver a digital speedo, oil temperature, an off-road drivetrain diagram with a pitch and roll screen, a driver assist graphic, a fuel economy meter, trip computer readings and audio settings. Enough on screens. You wouldn't expect the ergonomics of a Wrangler to be perfect, and they're not. The push button starter, for example, is rather obscured, and these netted storage pockets that feature on the bottoms of the doors, they're almost useless. Plus, in a right-hand drive model like this one, you have to awkwardly reach across the cup holders to get to the handbrake, and you get a pedal box that lacks a left footrest and may feel rather tight for folk with larger feet thanks to an intruding center console. But all the retro stuff helps, things like the exposed bolts around the dash, the chunky A-pillar grab handles, and the Willys Jeep silhouette on the auto gear knob, which also features on the bottom of the driver's side of the windscreen here. You'll also love the great view out. Well, it's a great view out of the front anyway, thanks to the seat positioning and the narrow A-pillars there. Despite the JL series model's more favourable rear spare wheel placement, your view rearward still isn't so great, but Jeep does provide rear sensors and a rear view camera to compensate for that. Practical touches include a narrow, deep, lockable glove box with a chunky grab handle just above, and a spacious illuminated storage area between the seats with a lift-up top tray and a USB-A port. There are more USB ports in the centre stack, all of which in this updated model allow devices to charge up to 4 times faster. Plus the twin cup holders we mentioned earlier are lit at night. You get these fairly useless shallow compartments on the top of the dash there, and vanity mirrors are fitted in the sun visors. Let's take a seat in the rear. Now, this 4-door design might be Jeep's long wheelbase version of this model, but this body shape's extra ½ metre of length still doesn't deliver doors that open with a very wide aperture. Once you're inside, it's not hugely comfortable either. We thought legroom would be an issue here, but actually we think you get more complaints about the rather upright backrests for occupants on a longer trip. Now, predictably, there really isn't room for 3 adults back here, but this surprisingly low transmission tunnel means that 3 children will fit fine. Those kids will be pleased to find more USB slots than we can ever remember seeing in the back of a car of this kind. Twin USB-A and twin USB-C ports, plus a 230 volt AC 150 watt 3-pin socket too. And there are reading lights built into the exposed body structure that above your head also rather neatly houses the speakers for the Alpine audio system. There are netted storage areas in the seat backs, along with chunky grab handles and cubbies built into the door pulls. Plus, you get a fold-down centre armrest with twin cup holders and a pen tray. As for storage, well, the netted door pockets might be useful for slim items, but these shallow compartments on top of this transmission tunnel here, well, they're pretty much useless, as is the narrow storage area that lies just above. Still, if your driver's removed the doors and you're travelling back here al fresco, open to the elements, you won't care about any of that. Travelling in the back of an SUV really isn't usually an experience to be in any way savoured, but in a Wrangler, it really can be. Let's finish with a look in the boot. Now, if you're wondering why Jeep's 4-door Wrangler model badging doesn't include reference to a 5th tailgate door, it's pretty obvious once you get back here, because there isn't one. There's just these pull-out lower and upper panels accessed by a chunky vertically set handle, which have the annoyance of being side opening. To be fair, that kind of arrangement really doesn't seem to bother Toyota Land Cruiser customers all that much, but because the setup here is split, it's slightly more awkward. You have to keep remembering, for instance, that you can't close this upper glass part while the lower section is in place. Once everything is opened up, there's a 533 litre boot, which ought to be bigger but can't be because it's compromised by the tubular steel beams and the sighting of the huge audio speaker here on the right hand side. 6 silver tie down points are provided, and there's a useful extra stowage area beneath the boot floor, plus a 12-watt socket on the left hand side. An optional tailgate table can fold out of the lower part of this rear door. There's no ski hatch or 40-20-40 seat split for longer items, so if you need more room, you're going to have to push forward the 60-40 split rear seats. Annoyingly, you have to go around to the side of the car to release the backrests. That frees up 1,044 litres of space. Surf Shack dwellers will be disappointed to find there's no option for a fold-flat front passenger seat. A lovely touch though in this rear door is this JL series build plate, which tells you that this Wrangler was built in Toledo, Ohio and developed in Auburn Hills, Michigan. This enhanced fourth generation Jeep Wrangler now only comes here in the four-door configuration that most customers this side of the pond want. Now at the time of this updated JL series model's introduction and at the time of this test in summer 2024, pricing started at just over £61,000 for the base Sahara version or just over £63,000 for the more capable Rubicon model that we've been trying here. That does seem a lot when you consider that the starting sticker price of a Wrangler in the US is less than half that. Engine-wise, the choice here in Blighty is restricted to a 2-litre i4 petrol unit with 272 horsepower, and that's mated to 8-speed automatic transmission. Let's have a word on what we can't have here in the UK Wrangler-wise, and there's quite a lot. Let's start with the two-door body shape. That was axed in 2023. 2 years after we saw the last of diesel power in a Wrangler, the 2.2-litre multi-jet model, that was axed in 2021, and eventually replaced by the 4xe plug-in hybrid petrol model that our market can't have because its hardware is incompatible with right-hand drive. Nor can we have a Wrangler with the gutsy 3.6-litre Pentastar petrol V6 that is available on this car in African and Middle Eastern markets. We're also denied the Wrangler 392 flagship model as well, a 6.4-litre V8 variant that you can only get as a grey import. Plus, the previous mid-level Overland trim has now been deleted too, and it doesn't look as if we're ever going to get the Wrangler-based Gladiator pickup. As for spec levels, well, both Wrangler variants are properly trail rated in the brand's terminology with a proper 2-speed transfer case that gives you a low range crawler gear. But if you were planning to do a fair amount of tarmac work in this Jeep, then you would probably choose the base Sahara version because that's fitted with more road orientated tyres and it uses the brand's slightly less extreme Command Track 4-wheel drive setup. For true Wrangler aficionados though, only this ultimate Rubicon variant will do. It gets the more serious 4:1 Rock Track 4-wheel drive system, which uses a tougher low-range gear ratio and heavy-duty front and rear axles, including the new full-float Dana rear axle added to this updated model. There is also performance suspension here and True-Lock electric front and rear axle lockers to tackle really extreme off-road trails. Also helping a Wrangler Rubicon in dealing with this type of terrain are these 32-inch BF Goodrich mud terrain tyres and an electronic front sway bar disconnect system to provide additional wheel travel when conditions really call for it. Enough with the range structure. Where does this Wrangler sit in today's very different SUV market? Well, if you're asking about rivals, there are none. Or perhaps there are any number. It all depends on how you view these things. Now, if you're asking us about similarly capable competitors, well, probably the most obvious one at the £60,000 price point is a Land Rover Defender 110. But that only comes with diesel or, for much more, with hybrid power. And it won't be anything like as well equipped as this Jeep unless you spend vastly more on it. With that in mind, you might instead think a better extreme SUV choice would be Toyota's Land Cruiser, but you would need from around £75,000 for the latest J250 version of one of those. Otherwise, though, it's difficult to escape the conclusion that there's really nothing quite like a Wrangler. It offers a kind of SUV recipe that if you were buying in the £140,000 to £160,000 bracket, might see you choosing a Mercedes G-Class. Or if you're in America, something like a Hummer. The Jeep, just like those cars, simply laughs at the hopelessly compromised mainstream SUV competitors, and it leaves them for dead when the road or the trail or the track turns gnarly. And on top of that, try finding another capable SUV that comes with a detachable roof. Enough with the comparisons. Let's say you've decided on a Wrangler. So can Jeep justify those premium asking prices with premium levels of equipment? Well, let's see. Now, we just referenced the fact that all Wranglers get the potential for open air motoring given the standard fitment of what Jeep calls the Freedom Top. This is a 3-piece modular hardtop with 2 lift-off front sections there and a rear part that you can remove with a socket set. Plus, as ever with a Wrangler, if you're handy with a spanner, you can take off the doors too for a really uninhibited feel, and even fold down the windscreen to give you more fresh air in your face, or maybe just a clearer view of the trail ahead. What other modern production car offers either of those things? Well, there isn't one. On to specific trim-related spec features, and let's start with the base Sahara spec model. This comes with 18-inch aluminium machined Baltic grey wheels, full LED headlamps, and the all-round parking sensors, and the Park View rear backup camera with dynamic grid lines. You're going to need that given the restricted rearward visibility there. There's also keyless entry, tubular side steps, and rock rails for extra underbody protection. Other exterior features include deep tint sunscreen glass, a vinyl spare wheel cover, auto headlights with headlamp leveling, power heated mirrors, front fog lamps, LED tail lamps, and a premium security alarm. And of course, Wrangler purchase comes with use of an app. The Jeep app in question allows you to do all the usual things like remotely activating the lights and the door locking, and it helps you to monitor your drive efficiency too. Inside, a Wrangler Sahara comes with dual zone climate control and part leather, vinyl upholstered, 8-way power adjustable front seats with lumbar support and also heating. That also extends to the leather wrapped steering wheel too. There's also ambient LED interior lighting, there's an auto dimming rear view mirror, there's cruise control, an active speed limiting device, and a 7-inch TFT instrument cluster display screen. Jeep also includes a premium cabin package. Now this further adds acoustic front glass, thicker carpet, and additional sound deadening foam into the windshield header, the front cowl, and the B-pillars. Infotainment is covered off to a level that previous generation Wrangler owners would be absolutely amazed at. There's now a bigger 12.3-inch centre dash Uconnect 5 nav radio monitor, which is of course your access point for navigation, a TomTom system with live traffic updates, which now comes with over-the-air updates at the push of a button. Plus, via this screen too, you'll operate a 9-speaker Alpine premium radio system, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring, that's available too, now wirelessly enabled too, and a range of Uconnect live services. Now this larger screen is a big step forward from the previous Uconnect setup. Its Android operating system offers 5 times the previous operating speed and regular over-the-air updates. Plus, 2 Bluetooth-enabled phones can now be connected in and can be operated simultaneously. This Uconnect 5 monitor has, of course, been designed to work in concert with the Jeep app we just mentioned. With that downloaded onto your smartphone, you'll be able to use a new Send and Go feature in the app, and that allows pre-recorded journeys to be sent directly from the user's smartphone to the car's navigation system. As before with this central screen, there's built-in Alexa home-to-car functionality, including an in-vehicle Alexa virtual assistant voice control. And the navigation system offers weather alerts, traffic alerts, speed camera locations, and it can also search for all kinds of points of interest along your chosen route. You can add in all kinds of apps like TuneIn Internet, web radio with more than 10,000 stations from all around the world, or maybe the Deezer internet music platform, which contains over 35 million tracks. There's a Reuters feed to keep abreast of world news, and of course you can access Facebook, Facebook check-in, and Twitter or X, or whatever they call it nowadays, so friends and followers can be kept in touch with you as you traverse the wilds. Heaven only knows what General George Patton would have made of all that. So that's how you can expect to find a Wrangler kitted out these days. And as we told you earlier on in our driving section, it's pretty well kitted out for the wilderness too. But if your destination is Kilimanjaro instead of the King's Road, then you're going to want to optimize things in that regard, and you will prefer this Rubicon variant instead. Go with this most capable level of spec and your Jeep will come with all the extreme four-wheel drive hardware that we briefed you on earlier and in our driving section, plus a heavy-duty 240 amp alternator, an uprated 700 amp maintenance-free battery and an auxiliary switch bank. In addition, Rubicon variants get black fender flares and slightly smaller 17-inch polished aluminium wheels with mid-gloss machined faces, and they look better suited to life in the wilds. On to options. Now, we think the key thing to decide here is how you want your Wrangler's roof to be. Some might find the three lift-out panels of the standard Freedom Top to be, well, a bit fiddly and a bit cumbersome, and that's why Jeep offers two other choices which replace the detachable panels with the fabric top. You can have this in what the brand calls Mopar Sunrider flip-top form. Now, this is where it slots in behind the two removable Freedom Top panels. The Sunrider hood folds back manually like the roof on a Mazda MX-5. Or even better, you can have it specified in Sky One Touch Power Top form with electrical operation. There are also two available hardtop finishes, black or body colour, and a dual door package is available too with half doors, and that means that there are multiple door, top and windshield combinations, allowing Wrangler customers to customise their off-road adventures to their specific needs. What else? Well, there are four new wheel designs from 17 to 20 inches in diameter, and you might want to fit out your chosen rim set with the optional LT 255/75R 17C all-terrain tyres. Across the range, it's almost certain that you'll be paying Jeep extra for your choice of paint colour here. Now, there are 10 shades. They now include the new Anvil paint option that we've got here, but the only colour that comes as standard is solid bright white. Otherwise, you'll be paying more for one of the optional pastel or the metallic colours. They all have strange names like Earl, Firecracker Red, Granite Crystal, Silver Zenith, High Velocity, Hydro Blue and Sarge. Beyond that, it's really a question of how far you want to go. Jeep's partner Mopar has created a vast range of accessories for this JL series model. For example, there's what the brand calls a mesh bikini sunbonnet mesh fabric that goes over the roof area that's opened up when you remove the three-piece modular hard top. The bikini attachment that shields the cabin from excessive buffeting. If you want to wade deep rivers, then you're going to need the Jeep Performance Snorkel, and that's to stop water being ingested by the engine. Once you get to your extreme destination, you might want to have the tailgate table that folds out of the rear door. And if you've loaded up your Wrangler with bulky camping gear, ideally you'll have protected the interior from damage with the optional moulded cargo tray. Mopar slush mats are also available to protect the carpets. There are rear moulded splash guards you can fit in extra grab handles, and there's also a smoker's pack if you haven't kicked the habit yet. Plus there are also windshield tie down and cosmetic Mopar additions like a satin black grille. On to safety. Now, we've yet to see a Wrangler undergo a Euro NCAP crash test, which is perhaps just as well because autonomous braking still hasn't made it onto the Wrangler yet. Jeep has done what it can in this regard though, and this updated model features second row outboard seat belts with pre-tensioners and load limiters, as well as structural improvements for side impact performance. There are the usual front and side airbags, and in addition, it's worth noting that Jeep has finally got around to installing side curtain airbags for the first and second rows. That can't have been all that easy given the constraints of that removable Freedom Top. All the airbags are now linked to an e-call system, so if they ever inflate, the emergency services will be notified of your exact GPS location. As you'd expect, there's ESC stability control and electronic roll mitigation, plus, of course, there's also traction control and ABS brakes with brake assist. With this revised model, the list of standard advanced driver assistance systems now includes drowsy driver alert, lane departure warning and traffic sign information. As before, there's also blind spot and cross-path detection, which stops you from dangerously pulling out when there's a vehicle in your blind spot, and also rear cross-path detection, which alerts you to oncoming traffic when you're reversing out of a parking space. If all that makes it sound rather as if the Wrangler has become gentrified, well, don't be fooled. Bottom line, only buy this car if you're very serious about off-roading. Otherwise, you'll just be wasting your money. What's the greenest car you can buy? Toyota Prius, a Nissan Leaf, or perhaps a Jeep Wrangler? Well, on what's called a dust-to-dust calculation of cars' environmental impact from its creation to its ultimate destruction, you'd probably be shocked to learn that it's actually the Jeep. That's according to figures released by CNW Research in America. Think about it though, and it makes sense. The proportion of energy and CO2 used to make a car is much higher than the amount it consumes in its lifetime. And Wranglers, after all, are designed simply. They don't cost a great deal to make, they're easy to scrap, and they go on forever. Small cars, EVs and hybrids, well, they're just the opposite. Now, you're going to have to remember all that because the fuel economy figures here aren't exactly stellar, even if you compare them to larger but similarly priced SUV rivals. When this JL series model was introduced back in 2018, you could at least mitigate your running costs by choosing the 2.2 litre multi-jet diesel version that was rated at 36.7 mpg on the combined cycle, and it could manage well over 30 miles per gallon on a regular basis. No such luck though with the 2 litre petrol model we're now limited to in the UK. The engineers have done their best with this unit. There's a CEGR cooled gas recirculation system with twin scroll turbo technology, a central direct injection and independent liquid cooling intake of air, throttle body and turbo, but all to little benefit. The combined cycle fuel figure for a 4-door Sahara version is a disappointing 25.4 miles per gallon with up to 250 grams per kilometre of CO2. This Rubicon variant is hobbled a bit more by its knobbly tyres and records even worse stats, up to 23.7 mpg and 269 grams of CO2. We have actually struggled to get near the 20 miles per gallon mark on this test. Other markets get a Wrangler 4xe model with this engine paired to a 400 volt 17 kilowatt hour battery pack, which when charged offers up to 30 miles of electrified driving, but sadly that setup was never engineered for right-hand drive. What else might you need to know? Well, via the Jeep app, customers can access a whole range of information about the journeys that they're making, checking their driving style, their fuel consumption, their average speed and more, to always know how they drove during each trip and how to improve their eco score for the next ones. The CO2 figures we quoted and the high purchase price are going to see the few company Wrangler users paying a hefty 37% benefit in kind tax and a hefty luxury car vehicle excise duty supplement. At least residual values should be strong though. Industry experts CAP HPI reckon that after the standard 3-year 36,000 mile period, a Wrangler Rubicon like this one will still be worth 48% of its original purchase price. Insurance groups are between 40 and 41. The warranty is a disappointing 3-year 36,000 mile package. That's very modest, although you can extend that at extra cost. As for servicing, well, your Wrangler's going to need a garage visit every year or every 9,000 miles, whichever comes around first. Jeep has had to walk a very precarious tightrope in its improvements to this JL series Wrangler. On the one hand, they needed to make it smarter and more relevant to the majority of SUV buyers, while at the same time not alienating those customers who love this model's rough, tough, go-anywhere ability. After trying this updated model, we think many brand loyalists might be quite pleased with what's been delivered here. Don't get us wrong, you've still got to be serious about hardcore off-road driving to consider a Jeep Wrangler, but not quite as serious as you had to be before. Although it's still very much a Wrangler, if anything even more capable off-road than before, this post-2024 era JL model is now a more capable all-rounder. It's safer, better connected, and with a much better interior too. In this form, one of these could just about provide versatile family transport for the user who doesn't mind making a few sacrifices at the altar of comfort, ride and handling. It's got a style all its own, but its heart and soul remains on the Rubicon Trail rather than on the King's Road. Thank goodness for that. Drive one of these and it's clear that the Wrangler's come a long way from the days of the old CJ and TJ series models, which tended to be driven by cigar-chomping beefcakes in aviator sunglasses trying to live out their World War II fantasies. We're quite sure that those kinds of people will find something to hate about this JL series design, but we couldn't. As with buying an extreme sports car, choosing one of these is a wholly emotive purchase, which will have very little basis in common sense. You'll want a Wrangler because it makes you smile, because it offers the prospect of opening up the wilderness, and because it makes you feel like, well, the hero in your own action movie. We are disappointed that it's become so expensive, and also that a wider engine range isn't being offered here. Otherwise though, if you were to change most of the things a typical SUV buyer might dislike about this Jeep, you'd dilute its authenticity, and then there'd be no point to a Wrangler at all. Of course, this would be a terrible choice if your SUV will have a heavy diet of on-road work, but that's like criticising a supercar for having a small boot. Horses need to be matched with courses, and if just occasionally those will take you to the back of beyond, you'll be really glad you chose a Wrangler for the trip. If previous generation versions of this Jeep weren't for you, then you probably still won't like this one. Well, no problem. The market is absolutely stacked with compromised alternatives. But if you've always wanted an excuse to choose one of these, then this improved JL series model's extra polish and its newfound sophistication provides it. It's still a vastly more capable all-rounder, but it's still also very much a Wrangler. And that is all that really matters.